There's a quiet problem that can happen right now, and most people won't even notice it until their next Social Security payment arrives in a way they weren't expecting. It may come later than planned, come in a different amount, or require more time to sort out than anyone would like. And by the time someone realizes something is off, fixing it fast can be a lot harder than if it had been caught earlier. The trouble usually doesn't start with anything dramatic. More often, it begins with something small, something easy to overlook at the end of the month, a detail that seems harmless, a task that gets postponed until later. But that small gap can quietly grow into a delayed direct deposit, an unexpected reduction, or a situation that takes time to untangle. And when that money is what helps cover rent, food, prescriptions, and monthly bills, even a minor disruption can throw off your whole budget. What makes this especially frustrating is that many of these issues can be prevented if they're caught before April ends. Right now, while systems are being prepared and payments are being lined up for the next cycle, any mistake that slips through can carry straight into May. So, the question is straightforward. What exactly should you be checking now to help make sure your next payment shows up on time and in the correct amount? Right now, as April comes to a close, there are 3 specific things you should handle. Not next week, not sometime later, but before this month ends, so you can help protect your benefits and reduce unnecessary stress going into May. This applies whether you receive retirement benefits, SSI, SSDI, survivor benefits, or you help someone else manage their payments. And don't worry, this is not one of those vague warnings that leaves you guessing. These are clear, practical steps you can take right away, even if you only have a few minutes. Each one is meant to help you spot possible issues early, before they become much harder to manage. And in just a moment, we're going to walk through the first one, which is often the most forgotten, but also one of the quickest ways to help prevent a payment issue before it begins. Here's what many people don't realize until they've already had a problem with it. The end of the month is when small errors can turn into very real headaches. Not because anything dramatic suddenly happens, but because of timing. By the final stretch of the month, Social Security systems are already preparing the next round of payments. That means whatever is currently listed on your account, your banking information, your address, your status, that is what will be used. And if something is outdated, incomplete, or incorrect, it may not trigger a warning. It may simply carry over into the next payment cycle. That's how people end up with deposits going to closed bank accounts, notices sent to old addresses, or changes that were never processed in time. And once a payment is already in motion, the process of correcting it becomes a very different experience. Then you're making calls, waiting on hold, explaining the issue, confirming your identity, and hoping everything gets fixed before your next bill is due. Something that might have taken 5 minutes earlier can turn into hours of stress later. And the most frustrating part is that most of these situations do not come from carelessness. They come from assumption. The assumption that nothing has changed, that everything is probably fine, that it can wait one more week. But this is exactly the time when waiting can create problems, because even something as simple as an old phone number still on file or a missed message in your account can slow you down when you need a fast answer. And that leads directly into the first thing you need to handle right now, because this is where many preventable problems actually begin. The first step is simple, but it matters more than people often think. Log into your My Social Security account and review your information. If you already have an account, take a few minutes before April ends and go through it carefully. And if you do not have one yet, now is the time to create it directly through the official SSA website. Not through a link in an email, not through a text message, and not from social media. Go straight to the source so you know you are in the right place. Once you are in your account, you are not just browsing. You are actively confirming that everything connected to your benefits is current and accurate. Start with your mailing address, because if that is wrong, you could miss an important notice without ever realizing it was sent. Then check your direct deposit information. If that bank account has changed, been closed, or even been updated in a small way, that is the kind of issue that can delay a payment right away. Move on to your phone number and email address, because if a problem comes up, those details can affect how easily you can resolve it. And do not skip your messages or notices. Sometimes there is already something sitting there that still needs attention. Finally, look at your benefit amount and payment information so you know exactly what your account is showing at the moment. This is not about being overly cautious. It is about staying ahead of a problem, because catching something early while there is still time to correct it is always easier than reacting after the damage is done. And there is another important layer to this that becomes more relevant every year: security. Social Security information is a major target for fraud, and simply logging in and checking your account is one of the easiest ways to notice anything unusual before it grows into a bigger issue. So if there is one thing to act on immediately after hearing this, make it this step. Just a few minutes now can help you avoid a much larger problem later. And once you have done that, there is another step people often postpone, even though it is the one most likely to come back and create trouble later on. The next step is the one people put off the most, and unfortunately, it is also the one that can create some of the biggest financial headaches later, because it usually does not feel urgent in the moment. It feels like something you can handle later, when there is more time. But when it comes to Social Security, later is often how small updates turn into overpayment notices, reduced checks, or letters asking for money back that has already been spent. So here it is. If anything in your life changed during April in a way that could affect your benefits, you should report it before the month ends. And what counts as a change depends on the type of benefit you receive. But this is where many people underestimate how sensitive the system can be. If you receive SSI, even changes that seem relatively small can matter. That can include wages or work income, changes in where you live, shifts in household support, updates to your resources or assets, or even something like someone moving in or moving out of your home. These are not minor details in the eyes of the system. They can directly affect how your benefit is calculated. If you receive SSDI, the focus is more on work activity. Going back to work, earning more than expected, or changing your work pattern can all affect your eligibility or payment amount. And if you receive retirement, survivor, or spousal benefits, you are not completely exempt either. Address changes, banking updates, and certain life events can still affect how and where your payments are handled. Now here is why this matters more than many people realize. When changes are not reported on time, the system does not always adjust immediately. But that does not mean it will not catch up later. And when it does, it often appears as an overpayment. That is when you get a notice saying you were paid more than you should have been, and now that difference must be repaid. Sometimes it is a small amount. Other times, it is hundreds or even thousands of dollars. And by then, that money is already gone, used for rent, groceries, utilities, or medication. That is when the stress really hits, because now you are not just managing your regular monthly expenses, you are also trying to figure out how to return money you did not realize was an issue at the time. This is especially important for SSI recipients because the rules are stricter and more responsive to changes. Something that seems unimportant on your end can affect your benefit calculation in ways you may not notice until later. And if you are helping a parent, spouse, or another person manage their benefits, this is one of the most common places where problems happen. Not because anyone is doing anything wrong, but because no one realized a change needed to be reported in the first place. So it is worth pausing for a second and asking yourself a few simple questions. Did you work at all in April? Did your income change? Did your living situation shift in any way? Did you move, switch bank accounts, or have someone move in or out of your household? If the answer to any of those is yes, do not wait. Taking care of it now is always easier than dealing with the consequences later. And even if everything seems fine so far, there is one more step people skip, and it is the one that can determine whether your next month starts smoothly or with an unpleasant surprise. Before May begins, you should know exactly when your payment is expected and exactly how much should actually reach your bank account. Not an estimate, not a rough guess, but the real number after everything has been deducted. Because this is where many people get caught off guard. They know their benefit amount, but they are thinking in terms of the full payment, not what actually gets deposited after deductions. And those deductions can change. Medicare premiums, tax withholding, garnishments if they apply, or adjustments related to past overpayments can all affect your final deposit without much notice if you are not actively looking. So take a moment to review the upcoming May payment schedule based on your situation. In most cases, payments follow a set pattern tied to your birth date or benefit type, with SSI usually arriving at the start of the month and other Social Security payments spread across the second, third, and fourth Wednesdays. But schedules can shift slightly because of weekends or holidays, which is why it is smart to double-check the official calendar rather than relying on memory. And just as important as the date is the amount. Look at your latest benefit details and write down what you expect to receive after deductions. Then compare that number to your monthly expenses before May even starts. Because when you are living on a fixed income, accuracy matters. A difference of $20 or $40 may not seem like much to someone else, but in this situation, it can be the difference between staying on track and falling behind. And if something does not look right, if the number seems unusual or the timing does not match, do not ignore it and hope it corrects itself. Catching it early gives you choices. Waiting until bills are due reduces them. And there is one more thing you need to be aware of, especially right now. Because this time of month does not only create risk from inside the system, it also attracts attention from outside it in ways that can catch people off guard. There is a reason scams tend to rise around the end of the month, and it is not random. This is when people are thinking about their money the most, checking accounts, watching for deposits, and trying to make sure everything is lined up for the coming weeks. And scammers know that. They use that awareness and turn it into pressure. You might get a call, a text, or an email that looks or sounds official, saying there is a problem with your Social Security number, that your benefits may be suspended, or that you need to verify information right away to avoid a delay. And the message always feels urgent. That is not an accident. It is part of the tactic, because when people feel rushed or worried, they are more likely to act without checking. They click a link, they answer questions, they share personal details just to try to solve the issue quickly. But that is exactly what these scams are designed to do. Social Security will not call you out of nowhere demanding immediate action or threaten to cut off your benefits if you do not respond on the spot. So if something like that happens, the safest response is to slow down and take control of the situation yourself. Do not use the link they send. Do not trust the number they give you. Go directly to the official SSA website or call the verified number you found on your own. That one step, choosing to verify independently, can be the difference between staying protected and dealing with a much bigger problem. Because once personal information has been shared, it is not easy to undo. And at a time when every dollar matters, the last thing you need is a problem that never had to happen in the first place. And that really brings everything into focus. Because all of this, checking your account, reporting changes, confirming your payment, and staying alert for scams, is not about being overly cautious. It is about protecting something that, for millions of people, is not optional income. It is the base that everything else depends on. This is the money that keeps the lights on when the bill comes due. It is what becomes groceries on the kitchen table by the end of the week. It is what makes it possible to pick up prescriptions without having to choose between your health and your rent. And when you are living on a fixed income, there is not much room to absorb mistakes. A delay is not just inconvenient, it can disrupt your entire month. A deduction is not just annoying, it can mean something else does not get paid. That is the reality a lot of people are dealing with quietly every single month. There is no backup plan waiting in the background, no extra cushion sitting there if something goes wrong. Every dollar already has a job before it even arrives. And that is why these end-of-month steps matter more than they may seem at first glance. Updating one detail, reviewing your account, double-checking a number, those may feel like small actions, but they are directly tied to whether your next month begins with stability or stress. Because when your income is fixed, even one avoidable issue can create a ripple effect that reaches every part of your life. And the goal here is not to add more pressure. It is to help make sure nothing slips by that could have been handled in advance. So before April ends, bring it back to something simple and clear. 3 steps that take just a few minutes and can help you avoid a much bigger problem next month. First, log into your My Social Security account and confirm that everything is accurate. your address, your direct deposit, your contact information, and your messages. Make sure what is on file truly matches your current situation. Second, report any changes from April that could affect your benefits. Income, work activity, living arrangements, bank changes, anything that shifted, even a little, is worth updating now instead of dealing with the consequences later. And third, check your May payment date and your actual deposit amount. Not just when it should arrive, but how much you should really receive after deductions. Write it down, compare it with your expenses, and make sure nothing looks unusual before the month starts. That is it. 3 steps. No complicated process, no extra forms unless something genuinely needs to be updated. Just a quick check to help make sure everything is lined up the way it should be. And when you handle these now, you are not just crossing items off a list. You are giving yourself a calmer start to May without the stress of unexpected delays or surprises. And I am curious, where do you stand right now? Have you already handled all 3, or is there still one you need to take care of before the month is over? Let me know which one you are on, 1, 2, or 3. Or if you are already finished, say done. It might seem small, but seeing that reminder can help someone else realize they still have something to handle before time runs out. And if you know someone who relies on Social Security but does not always keep up with these updates, this is the kind of information that can genuinely help them avoid a stressful situation next month. A quick share or a simple conversation could make more of a difference than you think. Because at the end of the day, this is not only about staying informed. It is about staying ready, one step at a time, so nothing catches you off guard when it matters most. And that is really the goal here, staying a step ahead so you are not forced to react at the worst possible moment. Because the system does not slow down when something goes wrong. Payments keep moving, deadlines keep coming, and if something gets missed, it can take time and energy to fix it after the fact. But when you stay ahead of it, even by a few days, you give yourself more options. You give yourself time to notice a mistake, correct it, and move into the next month with a little more confidence. And I know it can feel like a lot to keep track of. Every month there is something new, a date to remember, a detail to review, a change to track. It can feel as if your financial stability depends on constantly watching for the next thing that might go wrong. But the other side of that is this. When you build a simple habit of checking in before the month ends, even briefly, you reduce the chances of being caught off guard. You do not have to monitor everything all the time. You just need a few steady checkpoints like the ones we covered today. That is how you turn something that feels overwhelming into something manageable and practical moving forward. That is exactly what I will keep helping you do, breaking down what matters, when it matters, so you can stay informed without feeling buried in details. Because you deserve to know what is happening with your money, and you deserve to enter each month with clarity instead of uncertainty. Just remember, everything covered here is for general informational purposes and is not affiliated with the Social Security Administration. Details can change, and individual situations can vary, so it is always a good idea to double-check anything that applies to you directly through the official SSA website or by contacting them using verified information. And as always, stay careful with your personal details, especially if you receive unexpected calls, messages, or emails asking for information related to your benefits. When in doubt, go directly to the source rather than responding in the moment. A few extra seconds of caution can help prevent a much bigger issue down the road. Disclaimer: this content is for informational and educational purposes only and is not financial, legal, or government advice.